Together, they bought these highly complex investments from Terra Securities and were told they were a sure thing.
It's safe, it's legal, it's no problem. And you will make a little bit more.
With no more risk.
They were sold as AAA to underline that this is really safe instruments. AAA was used a lot.
That AAA rating was all Narvik needed to know to invest. It was even more important than knowing exactly what they were buying. When Narvik agreed to borrow money from the banks and buy these CDOs, do you think anyone here understood what they were doing?
No, no way.
Do you think you understand what a CDO is?
No, not fully.
Do you think the brokers at Terra who sold these CDOs could tell me what a CDO is?
They can tell you something about it, but I'm convinced that they did not fully understand.
So Citigroup was selling Terra, or offering Terra, these very complicated structured products.
Yeah.
And the brokers at Terra didn't fully understand.
Yes.
And then they went and sold them to municipalities that didn't understand them at all.
They absolutely did not understand it.
But Narvik and the other Norwegian towns bought them anyway. More than $200 million of collateralized debt obligations. Town leaders thought their budget problems were over.
When Narvik initially agreed to the deal to buy these CDOs, were people thinking this would be a positive, that you would all be celebrated one day?
Yeah, I think we thought so. And if it had turned out that way, some of us would have become heroes, great heroes.
Suddenly, Narvik's fortunes were tied to a product made in the factories of Wall Street, a product that was more of a mystery than the townspeople could ever have imagined. Back in New York in 2004, CDOs were the new cash cow on Wall Street, and their creators, a bunch of math geeks, were the new heroes on the block. One of them, Ira Wagner, ran the division at Bear Stearns that concocted newfangled ways to package just about anything.
We did a variety of interesting transactions. At the time, I worked on a film securitization for DreamWorks, where we borrowed against future revenues for their films. We worked on a financing where we financed sports arenas. We financed the Staples Center.
Is it fair to say that wherever there is a future revenue stream of a significant nature that can be relied on, you could securitize it?
You certainly could look at it.
Wagner and his colleagues took a good look at mortgage-backed securities. They seemed like a safe source of revenue as long as people paid their mortgages on time.
I think most people felt that investing in residential mortgage-backed securities was a relatively safe investment. These tended to have investment-grade assets.
Mortgages usually, people pay their mortgages. People pay their mortgages back, or at least they used to.
That's right.
Bear Stearns took the mortgage-backed securities and pieced them together, creating CDOs that investors could buy.
45-cent limit now to buy.
The more demand rose for CDOs, the more mortgage-backed securities the banks needed. And the greater the demand for mortgage-backed securities, the more money Wall Street banks threw at mortgage lenders. And this really did, it would seem, make credit much more widely available.
It was a huge provider of credit, and I think we all know that you need the credit markets to work to have the economy function. That was financial engineering.
Financial engineers like Wagner were trusted by everyone, from the school board in Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin, to the New York City Transit Authority, to the City Council in Narvik, Norway, and beyond. CDOs, a 21st century American export.
You were probably looking at least 50% of CDOs going overseas. And that was probably mostly distributed between Asia, East Asia, and Europe.
Every CDO the banks created brought in a hefty fee, and feeding that growing global demand meant Wall Street had to keep grinding them out.
The volume increased. Through the early 2000s, CDO volume was about $50 billion a year. From about 2004 onward, there was just, a tremendous increase in volume to where it reached about $300 billion.
Wall Street was making big money on CDOs and on what went into them, mortgage-backed securities. With all that money at stake, Wall Street bankers like Michael Francis were buying mortgages with abandon.
At the peak in 2005, $4 billion a month.
That's unbelievable. Were you guys printing money over there? Was everybody getting paid really well? Was it just a big party?
But yeah, it was sort of like that. A lot of people were getting paid a lot of money, absolutely.
Did anybody ever say to you, let's put the brakes on? Or were they always looking for more product?
Towards the boom, it was all push harder, get more production.
You never heard somebody say enough?
No,
Enough.
no, there was never a time where somebody said, hey, hold on, let's not do this.
With a raging demand for mortgage-backed products, Wall Street begged lenders like Bill Dallas to find a way to make even more home loans.
They can't help themselves. And this is just like your old, frat party or sorority party. People would not go home.
Even those who had taken a pass now wanted in. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those quasi-government agencies, plunged into the business they once shunned, subprime mortgages.
No, you don't have
So did mortgage lender Bill Dallas.
Our whole strategy was to do something else than this. It's just that this is making money, so how do we not do it? Ultimately, if you would have had actuarial people who were interested more than just the next 3 years, somebody would have said, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Try to...
Well, what happened?
There's natural tendency to loosen by originators and borrowers. Everybody wants a home. Nobody qualifies, and somebody's got to stop them from themselves.
And
That's
nobody
us.
did.
That's the lenders. We have to stop
But
them.
you didn't.
We couldn't.
What do you mean you couldn't?
Full doc could have stopped it. If I would have said to you, fully document your income, but I'm one lender, right? So you know what happens to my volume? Goes to zero. Who else does it? Everybody.
Greed is a very hard emotion to put in check.
It is. You could see it, you could talk to people about it, and nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared. There's no somebody saying, stop it. We can't do this anymore, even if we go out of business. That's the kind of Herculean effort you'd had to have had there.
Mortgage broker Lou Pacific was no Hercules.
It was a frenzy that was going on. Most people live off the equity of their houses, and they have for many, many years. I have clients who I would refi every single year, and every time I do, I'd pay off all their credit cards and their cars. The following year, they'd call me up, and this is when properties were going through the roof. They would call me up and say they ran their credit cards up again and they need to take another loan out.
You were going to keep making the loans, though.
As long as there was Wall Street providing the money and the borrowers wanted the money to be helped out of debt, there wasn't one borrower who cried when they cashed the check at the end of closing.
Got it. Where are you? Were you on the chat?
All of which raises the question, while bankers were feeding this mortgage madness, where were the watchdogs?
Did you or your bosses, to your knowledge, ever hear from the SEC or the Federal Reserve asking questions about your business?
No, not at all.
Some insight into oversight when House of Cards returned. Back in 2005, in California, where the boom began, there was a growing epidemic of euphoria. It even had a name, affluenza. For those who caught it, the main symptom was conspicuous consumption. And for those Americans like Arturo Trevilla and Cynthia Simons who wanted a home of their own, the American dream seemed more rewarding than they could ever have imagined.
I find out after I bought the house, 3 months, 4 months later, that the price of my house, it went up. It was $640,000, almost $50,000 more.
A year after I was in this house, it was worth like $749,000. So I was like, whoa, I was really excited. So I figured, oh, if I'm in this house for 5 years, it'll be easy to sell this house for $1 million and get out.
In 2005, the U.S. median home price was $240,000, up from $170,000 5 years earlier. That's an increase of more than 40%. Flipping homes for profit became a sport. A national pastime on primetime TV.
Want to make more money in a few months than you did last year?
The neighbors of homebuyer Barbara Dunkley joined the flipping free-for-all.